This is what this consultation is about. There's no specification for what they have to do on any station in Britain, even the biggest ones. So they will do what they like. They're cutting the hours, cutting the deployment, and for people who need to travel, which is often off-peak, that will be the very hours that staff will not be there. There's no modernisation coming in on the back of this. There is no promise of greater accessibility. These watchdogs are completely overwhelmed, and they said, do not do this closure programme in this way.
For anybody that wants to.
Yeah. So a quarter of the people are to be made redundant. A quarter of the jobs are going to be cut on stations, 2,300. The companies have notified us that already under the statutory letter. So they're not taking them out of the ticket office to work on the platforms. They're taking them out of the ticket office to make cuts, to cut the jobs out of the systems. And it's just a nonsense that these people will all be redeployed. They're cutting the hours, cutting the deployment, and for people who need to travel, which is often off-peak, that will be the very hours that staff will not be there. They'll put people there chiefly in the peak hours when it suits the companies, not when it suits many pensioners and others that come out after the early morning rush and all the rest of it. So they will be left to fend for themselves. And I think business people find it hard to understand the fear that puts into people's minds about travel. And Schedule 17, which is the thing has been abolished, which we've been consulted under, means that is the only means by which you can guarantee staff will be there. It's a regulation. That is being abolished. When this is abolished, and if it goes through, there will be no regulation for any of these train operating companies to put any staff on any station whatsoever. So what you're having now is a temporary measure to get this through. And in 2 years' time, there will be barely anyone working on stations on our railway because there will be nothing to stop them destaffing it. And they will say it's not efficient, and even the measures that they're putting in, which are only promises, they're not business commitments, they're not regulations, they're not on a record. They are commitments to get this consultation through. So you can't rely on it and you can't trust them. They are going to cut the staff and cut accessibility.
Thank you. Katie, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely the case. Disabled people need staffed stations. Due to our hideous Victorian infrastructure, there's a massive step to get onto the train. I need someone to bring out a manual boarding ramp to help me get on. Blind and visually impaired people may require sight guiding through stations. This is particularly an issue due to the lack of tactile paving on platform edges, which means that navigating a station independently is dangerous for many blind and visually impaired people. People who have mental health conditions or learning disabilities or cognitive impairments may need a bit of extra support safely navigating a station, particularly if it's crowded. All of these use cases of staff demonstrate that staff need to be visible, they need to be located. Now, this idea that staff currently being behind the glass is a problem that needs to be fixed is not the case at all. It's actually one of the most important accessibility features of a ticket office. It's a designated place where disabled people can go and be assured that they will find assistance from that place. This idea of moving staff into multifunctional roles where they could be anywhere on any of the platforms or anywhere in the concourse or indeed anywhere else requires disabled people to arrive at a station and go traipsing around a station trying to find this member of staff. And these disabled people may have energy limiting impairments, we may have mobility impairments. I already experience the impact of this because one of the stations that I use very frequently has already closed their ticket office on some days. It now shuts at 1 p.m. on a Saturday. So if I want to travel on a Saturday afternoon, I go to the ticket office, it's shut, no one's there, I have to find a member of staff. I have to push myself up a ramp, over the footbridge, down the other ramp, check one platform, and do the same, and check the entire station. That is completely unreasonable.
On that point then, do you think there is any way to be able to shut the ticket offices at all to help those who need help with their accessibility? Is there any way to do this?
So something that's been suggested is this idea of a designated point where staff will be. And we know that some operators have already rolled this out at several other stations. So Chiltern already have this customer-focused approach at their stations, including Oxford Parkway and Bicester. And what that is they have a big information desk that is fully staffed all of the time, usually by 2 members of staff, and that desk can take cash payments, it can sell any type of ticket that exists, including the D35 and D50 discounts that aren't available online or at TVMs. And they have staff who can provide assistance, can book you a taxi if the lift's out of order, all of those things. It has a hearing loop as well. There is, for all intents and purposes, no difference between that and a ticket office. The only difference, as Mick has already highlighted, is that there is no regulatory obligation for a train operator to keep staff at that help desk. Schedule 17 only applies to the ticket office. So we can have a ticket office 2.0, and there's absolutely nothing in place to ensure that TOCs will actually keep staff at that information desk.
It's unmandatory and unregulated, and they can remove it whenever they wish with no consultation, and that's what they want to happen. So Steve Montgomery, who sat here and said there are no plans to close ticket offices, and then he's going to close 1,000 of them virtually, has said to me face to face, any hubs that we bring in will be temporary while we update TVMs and do other measures until we get all the technology that we want. Any information point or any passenger hub, which is the term you'll hear later on, will be a temporary measure until the full transition comes in, and there will be no infrastructure, desks, windows, whatever you like, glass. There will be nothing in the future. That's what we had in the 90s on Silverlink going around North London. No ticket offices, no staff, nothing. When we went into the negotiations, we were expecting a modernisation package. We haven't got a modernisation package, we've got a closure package. There's no modernisation coming in on the back of this. There is no promise of greater accessibility. So if we were to have they need to drop these plans, and if they want to talk about greater accessibility, different retail measures and different styles of hubs or customer service centres, well, let's have that conversation. But they're going to be turned into Costa coffees. This is. I was at Penzance Station. Network Rail have already closed the current outlet, which is a family business, in order to bring corporate multinational companies in to sell very expensive hot drinks to people that you can get everywhere you go, which is what our country's turning into in the high street, which is why people are so angry about. These are community centres in many towns and villages. I've been up to Berwick, I've been down to Penzance, been all over the country. People are going absolutely crackers about losing more after the banks, the pubs, every community asset being closed down. If we want an accessible railway that's friendly for everyone, and don't forget, if it's accessible for disabled people, it will be accessible for our foreign visitors who we want, it'll be accessible for everyone, it'll be accessible for women who are fearful about travelling. If we want that modern offer, why have we not got a proposal on it? Even the hours they've got are cuts to hours. And it's every person for themselves on the railway. And once the sun's gone down, many people will not want to travel on this railway in the future. That's what we're seeing, a fairly apocalyptic version of what the railway will be like. And unsocial behaviour will go up. We're not talking about that today. But if it's accessible for elderly people, for people with disabilities, people with learning difficulties, it's going to be great for the rest of us as well, because there'll be lots of staff around directing us, assisting us. And that's what we want, but we've got no proposals like that whatsoever.
So
it's just cuts.
It's the lack of clarity and specificity, if that's a good word, as to where it's going to finish up at.
And lack of regulation. You need regulation to make these companies do,
or at least a framework,
what the government and the DfT and policymakers specify. You will have an unspecified railway. This is what this consultation is about. There's no specification for what they have to do on any station in Britain, even the biggest ones. So they will do what they like.
Okay. Just before I lose that there, I just want to ask one specific question to yourself, Mick, and then I'll come to you, Louise. Just in terms of your members and things, in terms of what's been potentially proposed, is there any additional training, or is the difference, or do your teams have the skill sets already for if these things were going to happen? Is there some engagement that would be needed in that space, just before I lose?
Well, they're committed to retraining people. They're going to make people who've never done safety critical work do safety critical work. They're going to make people that have never done ticketing work do retail work. So we don't know how that's going to work, and that's one of the
There will be some training
discussions. Well, they're saying there will be, but we don't know what that will include. What they want to do first is cut the jobs. They want to get on with redundancies as soon as they can, and then make the best out of it after they've cleared everyone out.
My perception is if you travel to various countries overseas, you can stand there and you turn up and you look at the notice board to see what's happening, and almost before you've looked at it, there's somebody stood there saying, "Can I help you?" Now, if you were to move to that sort of situation where you had that level of engagement from staff on a platform or the thing, that might be a better place than them all being sat behind glass doors, if you like. But it's that if in the first place, isn't it?
They might only do that 2 hours a day, and if you're not there for those 2 hours, you won't get any help at all.
Yeah,
That's what they're promising.
I follow the logic.
Unfortunately, it's a very long way removed from what the plan's actually set out.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to share, that there's a different position between the vision and what the plans seem to be implying at the moment.
Can I just reassure you that the wider concerns you've outlined about accessibility needs, that's the purpose of our overall inquiry. We'll be looking at those in other sessions.
For London, obviously, they closed a lot of their ticket offices in 2015. What is the difference between what's proposed here from what TfL have done? And are there any lessons that should be learnt, maybe, Mick, if you want to...
Well, it's very unsatisfactory that they did that, and of course somebody with blonde hair promised that no ticket offices in London would close. That was a manifesto commitment when he stood for election, that none of them would close whatsoever. So that shows how far you can go with some people making promises. The difference in London, you have a very simple fare structure that is easy for everyone to understand, and secondly, due to the King's Cross fire, we have fire regulations on every subsurface station with mandatory in-law regulations about how many people have got to be on duty in the concourse, in the tunnels, on the platforms, all around, and if those people are not there, those stations cannot open and have to be closed. You have a completely different regulatory framework. What you'll get with these proposals are, as I've said before, no rules, regulations or requirements at all. And the TVMs that we've spoken about, I don't think they're even covered by any regulation. So a lot of people are talking about TVMs. I've been told by very senior people in this industry there will not be any TVMs. TVMs are going to be phased out, and they are a temporary measure, and the assistance you will get is how to use your phone. And if you haven't got one or aren't very good at them, you won't get any help at all. You won't be able to buy a ticket. You might be interested to ask what their plans are for TVMs, but the maintenance schedules on them already have completely fallen to pieces. They're dilapidated and very often do not work at all. Again, this is a stepping stone to get this through, this reliance on TVMs, which are sometimes on staircases, in the middle of staircases, but they will not be around at all because it costs money for contractors to come and fix them and for staff to go and reset them, and they don't want staff.
Well, Rail Delivery Group have suggested that they will ensure that those ticket machines are upgraded, and want to see those upgraded. Would that help?
Is it a requirement?
Well, that's what they've said, that they want it to see them improve.
Yeah, but the chair told us that they wouldn't be shutting the ticket office. There were no plans.
Can I come in on
I think you've come in enough. We want to ask some of the other witnesses some of the questions, but in terms of the other issues that I was going to ask you, Mick, you mentioned about modernisation. What was your view in terms of modernisation? What should that have looked like in your view?
Well, we haven't had a modernisation proposal, but any proposals have to take on board the social model of accessibility and disability, and it has to have an updated retail offer where you can buy tickets and buy permits for your journey at the station. Right. And if you don't have that, we will have de-staffed stations. So if they want to talk about how we update retail, we can do that. We have updated retail, but what they are doing is already limiting what can be sold on ticket office machines. They're not updating those. So we already have a limited amount that can be sold. And everyone you will speak to will say they would prefer the interaction with the ticket clerk because they get a better value. And you've got to remember, when it's all done through apps and AI and algorithms, The train companies will be able to sell you the tickets they want you to buy, not the one that you may need or be better value. And you get that from human interaction. They want to take the human out of this so that they can just download into you the ticket they want you to buy and make you take the journey that they want you to take.
Mick, surprisingly, we might be on the same side of this issue. But in a more general sense, and you and your members know the railways perhaps better than most, what are your feelings? If all these changes went through, what do you think would be the downturn? There's not going to be an upturn in people using the railway. And bottom line, it's about money. We want to get more people using the railways. What do you think is...
Well, I think we're going to have what might be a hostile environment for not just disabled people with physical impairments and pensions. You've got to remember there's lots of people with learning disabilities. The blind groups aren't represented here today, who I've seen out on the demos and on the activities. They are up in arms about this. And the guidance they get from staff and the understanding they have from staff, almost on a one-to-one when they're regular travellers, cannot be underestimated. So I think this is a dash for cuts. It will affect our people, but I mean that's maybe not your concern. But it will affect.
There's a percentage of journeys that are made maybe today that perhaps won't be made in the future, not just from disabled groups.
We should be looking for growth. We should be looking for growth that all people can feel that the railway's theirs, that it's an environment that they can trust. And the buses as well, all of these public transport things. And we should be looking for people to be less locked into their houses and their own lives and getting out into communities and playing a full role. And we hope that our members can serve those people and be part of that accessibility drive. That's where we should be looking. And we think this is just a means by which you can cut staff, and the consequences have not been thought through. Nobody's looking at a new transport system that is modernised, I think, using technology as a friend to people rather than something that's going to obstruct them. And the groups that we've met are completely hostile to these proposals. They want the opposite. If we want a modern railway, let's modernise it and let's not go back to de-staffing that we've had in many situations already.
And make it welcoming.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
On the process, I haven't got much faith. This process is not designed for this level of closure. We've only closed 23 ticket offices in the last 10 years. And it's normally about sections, about limited areas. And then you can see the watchdog could do a decent job. What are the mitigations if it's along a route? If you're closing virtually all of the ticket offices and you're going to get 750,000 responses, that means you've got to think again just anyway. You've got to stop what you're doing because nobody's supporting it. They're not getting 750,000 responses saying, please close my ticket office. So they've got to stop and take a breath. These watchdogs are completely overwhelmed, and they said, do not do this closure programme in this way. Go in swathes if you've got to do it, but we cannot staff or resource it. That's why they're having to extend. So the whole process is flawed, and I think it needs to be halted.
I don't disagree with my colleagues, but I'm going to be more optimistic. I don't think that the groundswell of opposition was anticipated. And I think it's turned it into a far more political issue than they'd initially envisaged. So I do think that the government could probably do themselves a favour and listen to what people are saying. I think that would help. They could help themselves a lot by if they did pay attention to the committee and to maybe to organisations like ours as well. I'm sure they've been inundated. I'm sure MPs on a constituency level have received a lot of correspondence about it. So. Yeah, I think that the government could. I haven't given up hope.
Okay. Apologies, Chair. There were yes/no questions.
Thank you. I've just got one quick question of clarification from Mick, because it's something I want to put to the train operators in their session later, and your point about them wanting to phase out ticket vending machines. Is it? You said the contracts for maintenance were being phased out, and that was a reason why you think they're not going to be here for much longer. But just to clarify, is that for the existing machines? Because I'm aware of lots of new types of ticket vending machines that are coming on stream. For example, Northern at Leeds have got an interactive one. But I just wanted to clarify what your point was.
There will be new machines and there will be updates, but the long term, I think they just find it to be an overhead, and it will go the same way as air travel. So if you want Ryanair, it's almost like you got a job with them when you try and book a flight, or EasyJet. That's their future view of the railway. That the less infrastructure you have, the better, because it's cheaper.
I will be putting that point to them later on.